and welcome back to another episode of From the Horsebox. I'm Claire.
And I'm Kate. It's so nice to be back together, just chatting to one person. Our last episodes have involved quite a few people, like our Jubilee Special and the RDA 40th, where we found the horsebox flying in different directions. So today it's lovely to be together in beautiful North Wales.
Yes, one person, but can we nail all that he does? And on the subject of flying, haven't you just returned from another Jersey jaunt?
So exciting. Zara and Toby have opened their restaurant, The Pavilion in St Helier, or town as they say. There only is one town. All day dining and drinking. It's got a great vibe and delicious food and cocktails. Please visit. Or even just follow them on Instagram. And that's The Pavilion Jersey, all one word lowercase, and Pavilion just having one L.
I'm not sure I could navigate those Jersey lanes in the lorry. I'll have to think of some other excuse to visit, to sample all that seafood on the menu. However, it's time for you, Kate, to reveal our guest this month, who is thankfully nearer to home, but he also supplies restaurants worldwide with game. We had a wonderful time being taken out into the park to feed the deer.
We are delighted to be talking to David Pooler, who is the head keeper at Rhug Estate near Corwin in North Wales and chairman of the National Gameskeepers Organisation. David, you're a key figure at Rhug. Can you tell us about your responsibilities?
My responsibilities really rely on making sure that the game and all the wildlife on the estate have got a thriving habitat to expand their growth on and the welfare of all the wildlife.
And at the end of the day, this has to pay financially.
Yes, we run a commercial shoot to make it pay, and some of the funding from the commercial shoot we've put back into the conservation on the estate.
So I've a sneaky feeling that the deer might be your favourite. Am I wrong? Am I right?
To say favourite isn't perhaps true. Very close second. I mean, all nature and all the wildlife is very high on my list, but a certain species of deer are very high up on there.
So how do they fit in with the sporting business of the estate, the deer?
The deer really are an aesthetic value, but they've got to pay like everything else. And it's nice because they're in front of the hall. His Lordship can get visitors to come and see them and stroke them. There are well-being deer. But it allows people that have never really seen venison, deer in the wild, how it can go from being on the wild or in a park situation to the plate. And we like to explain that it's all part of the process. Is stress-free deer in the park means stress-free meat on your plate.
So which types of deer do you have?
We have fallow and sika. The sika deer are a lot, not domesticated, but a lot more sociably active. They like to be stroked or seen.
So how do they get from the deer park to the plate? What's the process?
Well, we're now in September, which is the start of the cull, and really what we're doing from now till we've culled all the youngsters, we're culling the bucks and stags. Bucks being the male fallow deer and stags being the male sika deer, and we're harvesting the crop really. Obviously, if we end up with an unbalance, we'll end up with fighting, and it's not good for the whole herd. Or we just end up with an awful lot of deer of one species or one sex.
So it's your specialist knowledge which keeps all the deer herd even and...
I'd like to say specialist knowledge.
Well,
yes.
we think that it is, actually, and you're a very vital cog in this whole... Your knowledge is a very vital cog in this whole setup.
Yes, it's something that's taken a lifetime to achieve. You don't just read a book and know how to do it.
The bison as well, how do they fit in?
The bison, once again, is a bit of a niche market, I suppose. It's another very healthy animal. It's here, once again, the same sort of thing. It's a visitor attraction, but equally it produces very high quality meat, and people like to see them. But the same thing, much the same as we cull the deer, we cull the bison, to keep a managed herd, and they go into the food chain.
How does bison compare to an average steak?
More expensive.
It's more specialist.
It's out of my price range. I wouldn't like to know what it tastes like.
And is it very...
It's very high in omega-3, I believe. Different.
So do these go to restaurants at all?
Yeah, I think a lot of the bison, well, certainly a lot of venison. I can really only speak venison, but venison is predominantly restaurants. It gets exported to Singapore, Hong Kong, Macau, and the farm shop sells our venison as well. And the same with the bison, that it gets sold everywhere.
Goodness, what do your gun dogs make of the bison?
I try to keep them as far away as possible, because bison, being a non-domesticated animal, they're still classified as a wild, dangerous animal. They look at a dog as being a wolf. Therefore, they would probably not find the amusement of a little pack of spaniels all that good fun.
Are they quite hard to handle then? Are they quite dangerous?
They're under the classification of wild and dangerous. Yeah. And so we have a classification certificate for wild and dangerous animals. They are handled for TB testing reasons, but it's very stressful on them. In an ideal world, it'd probably be better if they weren't TB tested live, but when they were slaughtered, TB tested, so a post-mortem to make sure they were. And if they were going to be sold live anywhere, then you could run a TB test. But to just routinely TB test them's extremely stressful for them.
So you're under the same stress as every dairy farmer with those cattle and the testing. So if we just go back to the most important benefits that game shooting brings, can you just tell us about those? Yeah,
we start with the spring, the predator control. We like restricted and targeted predator control, so you're targeting certain species that will have a massive impact on vulnerable species, such as your curlew, your lapwing, yellowhammer. And if you start your spring campaign early enough, you don't need to carry it on all the year round, but you can control the predators.
So that gives you the abundance of the full range of habit.
But by removing certain species at certain times of year, even just for leverets, our hair count's gone up exponentially on here since we've become more targeted at the correct procedure at the correct time of year. Then we'll move forward into the sort of rearing season side of it. We'll be rearing our game birds, but also sowing conservation headlands for wild birds so that they can feed through the vulnerable winter. Then you move through to obviously the shooting season, which is of massive importance to a rural community because it brings in valuable income, not just for the people that are actually running shoots, but for hotels. Even our farm shop has a massive benefit from having people come through for a bacon and egg roll before they go shooting, or even a bottle of slow gin they've forgotten to buy before they came as a guest. The hotels, the fuel stations, and then you've got the beaters, the older beaters. It's mental well-being because they're out socialising with younger people. The youngsters, they learn how to interact with older people. So there's a full range of what we do. Everybody's equal. We all like to think, whether it's people look at the guns as being the elite and the beaters being the peasants. It's not that at all. It's just like-minded people all being out on a shoot day.
So your father was a doctor in rural Shropshire, where you spent a lot of your childhood, mainly with your grandfather immersed in the countryside. With hindsight, how important were those early years?
Vital. I mean, I spent a lot of time with my grandfather. He taught me to read and write. But he taught me the love of the countryside and how important it is for people to understand how the countryside works. And that comes through equally life and death. You know, from a very early age, you learn that things are born and things will die. So there was never a shock when something died. It's upsetting at periods of time when people die or pet dogs die. But we know it's a full circle. With life comes death. But yeah, I think all my earliest memories of walks with my grandfather were all involving either the Wrekin or the Arkle, and foraging for acorns and footprints and different types of barks on trees, and learning the plants and everything that goes along with it.
One of the parts of the discussion at the Welsh Game Fair last week, one of the statistics aired in the discussion was that children nowadays have a radius of travel as to like half a kilometre around their house, whereas they used to be able to roam, it was measured in miles.
Yes.
So the children's lives sort of have shrunk in the modern world. So yours was obviously.
Oh yeah, I mean, it was
Of the former.
Yeah, I can't. I think looking back on it, I don't think there was anything of the Limekiln Woods, the Wrekin, the Arkle that I didn't know with my grandfather or even my father when we went rambling.
Yes, well, today they're on the iPad,
Yeah.
or whatever.
Or competing. We do like to see the youngsters competing because we have a very strict mobile phone policy. If I see you on your mobile phone, it goes in my pocket.
You had a lovely story before about one of your young beaters and one of your more senior beaters, how they were helping him.
Oh yeah. It's they start off being not little oigs, but they start off being self-centered little children, and then you see the older beater or the older picker up with a sling full of birds walking around, and you just give the young lads a bit of a nudge and can just go and run down there and help carry those birds. And they grumble and grouch about it, but after they've done it, they've realised, because they've been thanked by the old boy, they realise that, helping older people, it becomes second nature after they've been instructed politely. Mm-hmm. And I think it is a vital thing for youngsters to be able to interact in a social way with older people. And certainly the old boys love it, and the older women. They love the banter.
That's what we all like, a bit of banter. You have done some after dinner speaking and mentioned that you had a rather good English teacher.
Yeah, I know.
What are your opening lines?
I know
of
where
your
you're
speech?
alluding to with this. It's I always, when people ask me how I got into gamekeeping, I always say it was by accident. It's my English literature teacher introduced me to Lady Chatterley's Lover, and I just thought naively that was the role for me until I started work, obviously.
Oh, right.
Fill us in. So do you think it's very much a man's job then?
No, there's no reason at all that a lady, we've got quite a few lady gamekeepers. Dare I say, a lot of lady gamekeepers are more than capable of carrying a bag of pheasant food and any job that I can do, with the exception of maybe reaching the top of the fence post, because not everyone's 6 foot plus. But I would imagine most lady gamekeepers could manage to do everything I could do, or have a friend that would be able to lift a post knocker on top of the post and knock the post in if they make them a cup of tea.
So do you see these in your National Gamkeepers Organisation?
Yes, yeah. I mean, we've got, we've just got 2 regional chairmen that are gamekeepers. Yes, we've got 2 lady gamekeepers in the National Committee. And it's surprisingly, certainly with the power of Facebook, how many lady gamekeepers are commenting on the gamekeeping forums. So it's very encouraging. And it's as I say, it's a very inclusive, whether you're old, young, there's no sex discrimination.
This week there's been a fantastic picture of 6 Balmoral gamekeepers guarding the Queen in Scotland. And the gamekeepers obviously there are so central to everything. Is that a tradition that the gamekeepers are so central?
Yes,
in that way.
Historically, it always has been. I mean, it was the same for Her Majesty's father. The Sandringham keepers escorted the coffin. I think going back historically, when landowners had country houses, the person of trust that lived there all the time was the gamekeeper, and the head gamekeeper had the responsibility of almost land manager. Historically, they were of great importance on family houses.
It is their job to know everything that's going on, really, isn't it?
Yeah. And unfortunately, there was a little period of time where, unfortunately, gamekeepers went as people hated them. But we're beginning to become a bit more popular with.
Well, I think you're doing a massive amount of work with education, aren't you?
I mean that's where our future lies. I think is the more we can educate the general public, not the shooting community because they're well versed in what we get up to, but the general public have a misconception that gamekeepers just want to kill pheasants or rear pheasants to be shot by wealthy toffs and that sort of good stuff. We're the only practitioners of conservation. Landowners own the land, the gamekeeper can manage the land. The other organisations might own the land, but they haven't got anyone on the land that has the same skill set as a gamekeeper to be able to remove the predators and deliver success on conservation.
And keep all the species in abundance, really.
Well, as our motto is keeping the balance.
That's right, that's the word. So how did you win a Purdy Award?
All my friends say by accident. As other friends say, I've peaked too early.
When was it then?
2 years ago. I'm very proud. It's an honour that I've achieved, I think, because of the work and commitment that I've put into the estate that I'm fortunate enough to be working on. We're achieving conservation successes. It's not always easy with an organic farm. It's probably easier actually with an organic farm than a conventional farm because with it being organic, we're not spraying everything. We haven't got all the sheep drenched, so there's an abundance of insects. And it's just enabled me to grow on from that. If you look at conservation as a three-legged stool, you need habitat, predation and food. And I'm just one of the legs of the three-legged stool. But fortunately, being organic, we've got the food. And because of sort of ideas and guidance that I can put into it, we've got the habitat right.
Well, it's a recognition of everything that you're continuing to do.
So do you have a nice trip down to London and a glass of champagne to go with it?
I don't drink, fortunately, but a nice trip down to London, I think His Lordship would probably compare me to Paddington Bear. If I hadn't got a bit of string attached to His Lordship, I'd probably still be down there.
So your job's steeped in history, from the clothes you wear and the many other traditions. You obviously value these links with the past strongly.
Oh, yeah. I mean, we're always going to be proud to be gamekeepers. From the clothes that we wear to the job that we do. You only have to look at our silly short trousers, +4s, breeks. They were designed before we got man-made fabrics and things like that. They were the turnover stops the water running down into your shoes or your boots. And they're still durable and practical today. But no,
so which do you prefer, shuffle or chameau?
Oh, neither. I'm not a branded person. Whatever's the best for the day.
You must have a big array of green coats.
That's all the colour I've got. I'm very fortunate I've got a coat for every occasion.
And how do you think the younger generation cope with your job today, the long hours?
It's difficult. We're notoriously not the best paid in the countryside. It's a different job. Their friends all are earning a lot more money. And as I say, you've got a choice, a good lifestyle.
Yeah, there must be the benefits. What are the benefits that aren't sort of
monetary?
Calculated?
It's not a 9-to-5 job.
No, but the benefits that you have in the job.
Well, one of the benefits is where I was alluding there. It's not 9 to 5, so you haven't got a clock on at 9 o'clock and clock off at 5 o'clock. If we're starting early in the morning, there's a period of time in the middle of the day that if you want to go out, if you want to go meet your friends. So you organise
yourself.
Yeah, it's so that's a huge advantage. There's times of the year where we're not quite as busy as other times of year. So days out, trips out, social activities for friends. So I try and allow the
so work-life balance, is that what they call it?
My two beekeepers, I give them as much as time So long as the jobs that are done are needed to be done, it's important for them to have time off, whereas a lot of keepers my age, it was dawn to dusk and it was 7 days a week.
You see, in my view, I see your job as a very prestigious job, and that is a very big benefit, isn't it?
Yes,
it's a very important job within the whole community.
It's not prestigious when you're out there at
it used to
job
be.
at night.
It has its moments where it's prestigious, and it has its moments where it can be quite scary, because at 3 o'clock in the morning, when you're meeting people that shouldn't be somewhere they ought to be and you're asking them to leave, can get quite scary. We're quite lucky here, it doesn't happen that often, but nationally it's threats of violence, intimidation. Very few jobs that you're doing as a vocation. You only have to look at the keepers on the ground.
That's generally in the countryside, though. People do have to be a lot more vigilant. The level of crime in the countryside is much more widespread now. We
can't level that at the police force, but it is an overlooked thing. The police force is overstretched. I mean, historically, gamekeepers on most estates, at least one gamekeeper would have been a special constable. And on a lot of estates, we still look at ourselves.
So you're protecting wildlife 24/7?
And people that live on the estate.
And the people.
Because, nowadays more people that have come to live in the countryside don't necessarily work in the countryside, so they leave early in the morning and go into town to work. Their house is empty all day. Well, it's really still the keepers that are strange cars where they're going. That house, that they're normally away until 7 o'clock at night. There's a car outside that house, just 2 minutes, you just turn up and drive to see what's there.
Yeah.
So
it's a sign of the times.
Old people, when it's snowing, we clear paths to their doors and things like that.
When the boughs across the road?
Yeah.
Well, you and I, David, have done an educational day for the Countryside Learning charity, and you're faced with a group of children and you're showing them, trying to explain things as you've just explained to us. How do you cope with their most difficult questions? Talking to children is actually very rewarding, because they're very open. It's black and white with a child. If you've got a prey species that's numerous and an endangered species that's rare, and you're explaining to a child that there's lots of these and they eat these, what would you do? They just turn around and say, kill that one. Out of the mouths of babes tell the truth. It's so encouraging, but tricky questions. No, there's no tricky question. It's just a tricky answer. Yes, it's trying to help them understand. Yeah, and it's actually very good, because with our props and our aids that you've seen, like whether it's a stuffed bird or whether it's a set of antlers, children can so easily be explained, and they do understand it a lot more than we'd give credit to before they have an opportunity to watch telly and get a complete jaded view on what we do. Well, children have to know where their food comes from. It's very important. Let's just go on to hospitality. That's a major part and a really fun part of what you do. How has it changed in your memory? How you say happen? I'm old? No, not at all. But we talked about the Victorian era when it was all, chandeliers and white tablecloths, and the hospitality is a major thing. Isn't it? I mean, it is, and unfortunately or fortunately, it's becoming a bit of a driver on some shoots, is to try and outdo each other on hospitality. I was fortunate enough to start off seeing very grand, austere tablecloth sort of things. Not that I'm Victorian, I'm hedging to now, but a lot of shoots were quite simply thermos flasks and sandwich boxes, a little stop for a slow gin. There still are those. Oh, yes. Yes, plenty of those. But it's becoming equally as important to try and outdo each other for drinks and canapés between drives. And I know it's very important for the beaters to be able to have time to get round the back of a drive, and you need a little pause. But the hospitality side on a shoot day doesn't quite need to be to the nth level,
And it is important. I mean, we like to do little nibbly things that are, I don't know, pheasant goujons, because we like to try and make guests eat pheasant.
Absolutely, yeah.
And whether it's come back to a gun room at the end of the day for a roast beef or a game casserole or something like that, or whether it's go back to a pub, but the hospitality side is what shooting's about. It's hospitality. It's
a complete package, really.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. You know, if you're going out for a day out anywhere, you want a day, and you've gone with 7, 8, 9 friends, some wives. It's the occasion, and if you've got an unruly dog, it just makes it quite funny. Most keepers pull their hair out, but if you're shooting with friends and your dog's racing about, it's a family day out.
I think you also made an important point there about eating the game that you shoot.
Yeah,
that's a huge important ethical point.
And it comes back down to the shoot looking after the game that's shot. Game is shot. It's for food.
Yes, and everybody takes it home.
It isn't.
For their families.
The analogy I like to sort of use is it's the whole package. A little bit like sheep farming. You've got sheep, lambs, and wool. The actual end product's a bit like the wool. We need it to go to properly be used, and it's got to be looked after, put in a chiller and treated as a foodstuff. It's no good you go back in time when you see people piling them up in the back of the Land Rover. That's one thing that's just got to stop.
Yeah.
They've got to be looked after and they're fit for human consumption.
Yes.
So to go back to the conservation, this obviously is a huge part. What do you think the best way forward is to conserve the endangered species, such as the curlews and the red squirrels?
To allow other organisations, non-governmental organisations, the opportunity to listen to the gamekeepers and the landowners that have been looking after our countryside for millennia.
Do they do enough of that?
No.
No.
We engage as much as we can, but a lot of the time it appears that you're talking to deaf ears. The grouse moors are a prime example. We've got numerous lapwing, numerous curlew, hen harriers all over the North Yorkshire moors. Some organisations might think we haven't got enough hen harriers on there, but there are, this year I think it's 116 fledgling hen harriers on grouse moors. Reserves that are set aside for nature, they've got nothing hatching on them. They've got no hen harriers, they've got no curlew, they've got no lapwing, they've got no golden plover. They're just barren landscapes.
So have you got statistics for all this?
These statistics are all available from GWCT, which is a vital organisation for the work they do, because they collate all the statistics of things like this. The BTO, British Trust for Ornithology, they're another good organisation. It's just another bird organisation that disbelieves everything that the shooting fraternity have to say.
It's not good practice, is it, for people not to discuss how best to manage things?
And unfortunately, to have a species that's in rapid decline because another species is in such rapid success, it isn't keeping the balance.
No, it isn't. And how do you find that the Welsh Government fare in all this? You know, they want lots of trees planted. What's it like to try and explain to them the practicalities of your job?
Difficult, because in one vein they're saying that we've got a state of emergency for wildlife in Wales. We've got to save the curlew because it's facing extinction in 2034, I think it is. And in the next vein, they're coming up with a general licence that means that you can't control the pest species that are eating them without. A crazy one, for example, is that we're not allowed to remove magpies in Wales for conservation reasons. We can still remove them for agricultural reasons, for taking lamb's eyes, but not for conservation, because according to their research, that in Wales the magpie is declining, and as such they don't feel that they're a threat to hedgerow nesting birds.
Do you think it's anything to do with your name that makes it more difficult working with the government?
It's a contentious one. Gamekeeper, people can switch off on. I think it's something we're looking at, we're talking to each other about, whether we have a rebrand, as they like to call it, in the 21st century and become game and conservation managers, or it might well help. I mean, there are a lot of us talking about it. A lot of people are actually using it. I tend to find myself using it, depending on who I'm speaking to.
I like game conservation manager.
Yeah, but there are some people that are very proud to be gamekeepers. I mean, I'm one that sits on the fence. I'm very proud to be a gamekeeper. I'm very proud of the tradition of gamekeeping.
Yes.
Why should you have
can
to
see,
change?
can't you, that it...
But in the same vein, like you say, if it shuts doors to talking to people, maybe, I mean, would it have the same ring as Her Majesty's Game and Wildlife Conservation Managers standing around her coffin, or Her Majesty's Gamekeepers from Balmoral standing around the coffin?
I know.
You can see the history
like,
side
we
of it.
value our traditions so much.
Yeah.
It must be a very difficult conundrum for your National Gamkeepers Organisation.
So looking into your crystal ball, how does the future look, do you think?
With bird flu and government agencies acting on what they think is the best interest for the countryside, gloomy. But if people start talking to each other and we start working together on collective projects such as the Curlew Recovery Project in Wales, and joined up thinking about where we're planting these woodlands and how we're going to protect the trees that they plant, because seemingly it's planting all this stuff is the way forward, and we all know it is, but not planting farmland, planting
Suitable
trees.
land, yeah.
I think if we can all start talking to each other, I think the future will turn around. If we can be responsible in the way we use the countryside, equally, if the politicians listen to us, I think there is a future for everyone. It's a bit...
If everybody works together.
Yeah, and it's the same with the bird flu. It's much the same as coronavirus. If it's going to become that we're going to have to live with it, we'll adapt. As a nation, we've adapted through lots of trials.
Yeah.
We'll adapt.
You've got to be proactive.
Yeah.
So you've recently been at the Welsh Game Fair. What was your official job there? Did you have something?
I didn't have an official job, no.
What did you do there?
We had the National Gamekeepers Educational Trust there as a tent, which is our education side of the National Gamekeepers
And what was the
Organisation.
one thing that you took away from your days there that you talked to someone?
I had 2 or 3 brilliant encounters. One was with a little 14-year-old that wanted to be a gamekeeper, which is always encouraging. I mean, I hope I've given him the right information, and the fact that don't be blinkered to be a gamekeeper. Open your eyes and look to be land management, because even if anything changes drastically in the game shooting world, we will always be land managers looking after the conservation. We had numerous children that didn't understand that we'd got carrion crows and magpies. They didn't understand that they were predator species, they're just birds. We had 2 sets of schools.
So you had to explain to them the nasty things that can happen.
Well, as I said earlier, that you let them tell you what to do with those. And we had 2 teachers wanting us to go to their schools and arrange visits.
That's brilliant.
And that's really where we come from.
Well done.
So how do you describe your job to the children?
I say to children, without us, a farmer might have been more encouraged to take a rough corner out of a field, take a hedge out, because not everyone realises what that hedge has done, whether it's shelter from the wind, shade, but it's a wildlife corridor to allow wildlife to go, whether from a river to a wood or from wood to wood. So I try to explain to children that it's all about everything meshing together to make it work.
That's brilliantly put.
So we like to celebrate countryside characters with our podcast, like yourself. Do you have anyone who springs to mind as inspiration? Apart from the author of Lady Chatterley's novel.
On a personal note, Ian Coghill, I think he's a fantastic ambassador. He's written, he used to be with the GWCT, he's written books on conservation. But on a pure personal note, we have a woman that works for the Gamekeepers Welfare Trust, a woman called Helen Benson. And she does such marvellous work for any rural worker, whether it's a ghillie stalker, riverkeeper, gamekeeper. If they get into hard times financially, if they have an accident, a bereavement, she's just there. I see her quite often, but not often enough. And she's just a ray of sunshine, and she's always there for anyone to help. And
so she has a huge understanding for the job.
Yeah, her husband's a gamekeeper. But she has such grit and determination. She travelled all the way down from Yorkshire just to give her a presentation we used to be allowed to call them Game Bird of the Year, but we're not allowed to now because it's not socially correct. And she drove all the way down from Yorkshire and jumped out of her car, big beaming smile. It's just like, and she is so inspirational to everyone. And the work she does is absolutely phenomenal.
Well, you quoted two interesting characters there.
Finally, you have an amazing farm shop on your doorstep. Are you tempted, and what do you enjoy cooking for supper after a busy day?
I eat a lot of venison.
What's your signature venison dish?
There isn't one really. It's venison steak, slip, slap, slop.
Do you have it with mustard or?
I put cracked pepper and whole grain mustard, just fried. Venison liver is another one of my favourites, but that tends to be if we've been stalking and it's breakfast. It's beautiful.
I think we'll have to call in on the way home at the shop, Kate.
I think we might come at tea time. I don't think I can do venison liver for breakfast.
Right, we've got some quick fire questions here. That's quite apt, isn't it? Right, your healthiest meal?
Probably muesli.
Oh, very healthy. Best name for a dog?
I like people's names, so I've got a Ben and a Bill.
Oh, not a Bill and a Ben. Your perfect day off? You do have one,
Actually, it's probably with a group of friends, talking countryside and looking in the countryside, going to a piece of countryside I've not seen before.
Rhug Farm Shop or Aldi?
His lordship will shoot me, but it's got to be Aldi because he knows how much I get paid.
Your favourite month of the year?
Every month.
Every month. David, thank you so much. We've thoroughly enjoyed coming over here, meeting the deer and talking to you all about all these wonderful things in the countryside.
My pleasure.
Thank you so much.
Brilliant, thank you.
To have the opportunity to talk to someone like David is why we started our podcast in the first place, and he didn't disappoint. I particularly appreciated his positivity about the future.
Yes, Rhug is a beautiful organic estate, and David really is a custodian of the countryside. So thank you for listening today. If you enjoyed our podcast, do rate, review and share, and help get even more listeners on board.
And don't forget that follow button so that you don't miss our next episode when it could be you in the driving seat.